E. It's said that trust is the foundation of every relationship. But what happens when the very people you trust the most become accomplices to your greatest betrayal? This is my story. A story of love, deceit, and an alliance I never thought possible. My husband, Michael, is an incredible man. Loyal, hardworking, and so good-hearted that people naturally gravitate toward him. But somewhere along the way, his kindness became a double-edged sword. His devotion to his family, especially to his mother, was admirable, but it also blinded him. Blinded him to what was happening right under his nose. It began innocently enough, as these things always do. A shared glance, a casual compliment, a harmless coffee chat. But over time, it became a steady drumbeat of attraction that neither of us could ignore. I found myself drawn to someone who wasn't my husband, someone I never imagined would see me in this light. The craziest part? Michael's mom knew everything. She wasn't just aware, she supported it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I couldn't stop replaying the events of that night. Each interaction, every lingering glance, the electrifying tension, it all haunted me. Yet, alongside the guilt, there was an undeniable thrill, a rush I hadn't felt in years. My life with Dan had become predictable, routine, and this was chaos wrapped in temptation. Greg didn't let things end with that message. He called me the next day, his voice warm, reassuring. "I hope I didn't overstep last night," he said. "You seemed a little overwhelmed." I assured him I was fine, though my voice betrayed the uncertainty I felt. Greg offered to come by, just to talk, but I declined. I knew better. At least, I thought I did. But then Jason texted. His message was playful, teasing. "Still recovering from our game night?" he wrote, adding a winking emoji. It was harmless on the surface, but the subtext was clear. He was testing the waters, seeing if I'd respond. Against my better judgment, I did. A simple, haha, it was definitely a night to remember, was all it took for the floodgates to open. Over the next few days, messages from all 6 men poured in. Some were casual, like Eric asking if I needed help around the house. Others were more blatant, like Mark hinting at how much he'd enjoyed my company. It felt as though they were circling, each one waiting for an opening. I tried to distract myself by throwing myself into my usual routine, but every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. I hated the hold they had on me, but I couldn't deny the attention was intoxicating. Then, one evening, Greg showed up unannounced. He stood on my doorstep, his hands shoved into his pockets, looking every bit the picture of remorse. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, his voice soft. I should have turned him away. Instead, I stepped aside, letting him in. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Greg was different that night, calmer, more reserved. He didn't try to charm me or flirt. Instead, he listened as I poured out my frustrations, my fears, my loneliness. For the first time in years, I felt seen. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I love Dan. But..." Greg leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "But you're not happy," he finished for me. "You deserve to be happy." His words hung in the air, a dangerous invitation. I knew I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Before I knew it, he reached for my hand, his touch gentle but deliberate. "Whatever you need, I'm here," he said. And in that moment, I let go. The following weeks blurred together, each encounter more reckless than the last. It wasn't just Greg. I found myself tangled in a web with all 6 men, each one offering something I felt I was missing. Jason's humor, Paul's mystery, Eric's stability, Mark's intensity, Andrew's playfulness. They became my escape, my guilty pleasure. But secrets have a way of unraveling, and mine was no exception. It was a Friday night when everything came crashing down. Dan came home early from his business trip, surprising me. I was in the kitchen texting Jason when I heard the front door open. My heart sank as I quickly shoved my phone into my pocket. Dan's smile faltered as he stepped inside. "Hey," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "Why are there 2 glasses on the counter?" I stammered, searching for an excuse, but the look in his eyes told me he already knew something was wrong. Over the next few days, Dan grew increasingly distant. He didn't confront me directly, but I could feel his suspicion growing. He started coming home at odd hours, checking my phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The guilt became unbearable, but the thrill of the secret kept me from coming clean. Then, one evening, Dan sat me down. "I know," he said, his voice steady but laced with pain. "I know about the messages, about the men." My world crumbled. I tried to deny it, to explain it away, but Dan wasn't having it. "I trusted you," he said, his voice breaking. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" I had no defense, no excuses. I'd let my loneliness, my selfishness destroy the very thing I'd once held dear. As Dan packed his bags, I realized I'd lost not just him, but myself. The woman I'd become, a woman who craved chaos, who thrived on temptation, wasn't someone I recognized. And now, I had to live with the consequences of my choices.